Hello and welcome. You have joined the e-commerce happy hour. My name is TJ Gamble, and I am here to help you get more from your Magento store. Today, I'm joined by a repeat guest. You've been on here at least a couple of times, maybe a few times now. And everybody, if you would, welcome my guest, David Cy Deppner. Thanks for joining us, David.
Hey, thanks for having me on again. It's always fun.
So where did Cy come from anyway? I don't think we've ever got into this. Where did that nickname come from?
Oh. I knew this was going to come eventually. So I don't know. This was actually just an old handle in the early days of the pre-internet. It's actually a shortened form of what was Cyborg originally. And just at that point in my life where I was going through college and doing a lot of development and hacking on computers and doing some questionable things, that was who I was. So all my friends from that point in my life started calling me Cy when we actually met for the first time in real life. And then that's just been a nickname ever since that people have known me in lots of different contexts. And there's more people that call me Cy than call me David.
So it's your hacker tag then, I guess.
Pretty much. OG.
like zero cool, right?
pretty much.
Okay. Should we call you Cy or should we call you David? Like which one do you prefer? Not what everyone does. We're not going to follow. We want to be leaders here. Sure. Which one do you prefer?
Well, here's how I put it to people usually. I say, my friends call me Cy. Are you my friend? Because usually when people call me up when they're trying to sell me something, a telemarketer will call up and ask for David, right? So that's a pretty clear clue about, say, the relative familiarity of the person I'm talking to.
Yeah, I've got the same thing here. If you call here and ask for Thomas, Thomas is never here.
Yep.
He's not here. I don't know that guy. I have no idea where he moved off somewhere. You're trying to sell me something, or I forgot to pay a bill or something. That's usually how those go. But I wanted to have you on. We wanted to talk a little bit. There's a couple of great Magento events coming up, and you suggested a very interesting topic, and I think they kind of go together. One being we've got MageTitans coming up in Austin, Texas, in I guess 2 weeks from today it is. And then that following Friday, 3 weeks from today, we've got Meet Magento in New York. And you had suggested a topic of how to become a conference speaker. And so I wanted to talk a little bit more about those conferences, why, and we've talked about it a few times on here in the past, but why I think it's important to attend and support these, especially these micro conferences, as I'll call them. You know, they're not the really big event that's officially supported by Magento, and they're really led and funded for the most part by the community. So I wanted to talk about that. Maybe, get some people aware. If they're not aware, you need to go ahead and book those tickets. They only get more expensive the closer we get to these events. And then let's talk about, if you want to more than just attend and you want to speak, how we go about doing that. So let's start with how many MageTitans or Meet Magentos have you been to? I know I saw you I've seen you at a few of them, but how many have you been to at this point?
Oh boy, I don't know. I haven't really kept track. I started the first real Magento event I went to was the Developers Paradise event back in 2010, and I went to several of those in Spain. And it was kind of interesting because at the time there was, I don't remember what year they started Imagine, but it was back in that era. And one year I had this idea, I could go to Las Vegas, really close by, California to Las Vegas, that's nothing. For Imagine, or I could go to Spain for the Developer Paradise. And I chose going to Spain. And it was cheaper than going to Las Vegas for a few days. And it was also a much more intimate event. Maybe there were 100 people there. And it had a mix of developers from all over Europe. There were some Americans there. There were quite a few of the developers that were working on the Magento core as well, so folks from Magento. And I got hooked on these events by going to those and realizing how much value there was. So you get the opportunity to, just have conversations, have some drinks, go to some presentations where you can actually interact quite a bit with people, and grab some business cards, get some email addresses, connect on Twitter. And then I was finding that I'd 6 months later I'd be working on some problem in the business, and we'd have some issue, and I'd know exactly who might have the answer to that, who to reach out, who I'd already connected to. And so I just started going to more and more of these events. Because it was such a great networking tool and helped me solve real world business problems when I was working for a merchant. It was great. But so back to that question of how many, I went to at least 3 of the developer paradises, several Meet Magentos now, MageTitans Mexico and the US last year, and quite a few Imagines at this point as well. So, I mean, the total number of Magento events is probably somewhere like 15-ish or something.
So I definitely believe you made the right decision by going to Spain over Vegas. I don't think anybody can fault you for that one. But I definitely agree with what you say.
I justified it to the employer as being a good financial decision, and it was.
Yeah, that's our problem here, is that I can't justify the overseas conferences because we don't do any overseas work. And so maybe we need to branch out and go international at some point in the future so that I can justify. I was not feeling so well last week seeing everyone's tweets from Barcelona. That was just driving me absolutely insane. Definitely wanted to be there. And Megan here says that you got engaged at a developer's paradise.
Megan who? What do you know?
Some stranger that you apparently got engaged to at a developer's paradise.
Yeah, apparently we actually got engaged. Well, if you're going to pick a spot, maybe the top of a castle wall in Spain sounds good, right?
Okay, it's not too bad. That sounds better than we got engaged at a developer's conference.
It wasn't like in a session at the conference. It was more like after the conference by a day walking around town. Yeah.
I feel like she's being a little misleading in the chat there then. I feel like
she does things like this. She's a troublemaker.
But I agree with you that the value in these conferences, to me at least, is the networking. There's some great talks, and you should go to those. And if you're a developer and you're looking for technical content, inspiration, see what other people are doing, that is a wonderful value as well. If you're a merchant and you're looking for ideas for what's working for other people, those conversations are great. For me personally, it's been the networking track, the hallway track as they call it. In life in general, not just business, is all about who you know. And seeing what other people are doing, seeing how they're doing it, what they've been able to accomplish, some of the cool things they've done. I always come back from these conferences extremely excited and motivated. And I was just saying last week, I would have liked to have been in Spain, because now is about the time I need that energy boost. I need that motivation that I get from these conferences. So the ones that are coming up in a couple of weeks are perfect timing for me. Do you feed off of that as well? Do you find that you're re-energized, you're more productive when you get back from these things? At least after a day or so of recovery, obviously.
Sometimes a couple of days of recovery. I definitely do. I'd say a lot of times conversations at the conferences give me new ideas, or like you were saying, seeing what other people are doing. When I was working on the merchant side, being able to interact on that hallway track with other merchants, because in day-to-day life, you just don't get that opportunity. Being able to ask questions about what they're doing and why and what failed for them. That was the thing I love. You go to conferences and very few people ever give a presentation about everything that's gone wrong. But you can find that information out just over some drinks, or at one of the parties, or talking to somebody between sessions, having lunch with somebody, and you find out what went wrong and you figure out what to avoid, and that is so valuable. But coming out of that, then thinking, okay, we were going down this path, but I just learned 10 reasons why we shouldn't. Maybe this is something we should explore instead. Somebody else has this new extension that might solve this problem for me. I mean, there's just all this stuff that comes out of it. There's ideas and relationships and some fun to be had. And yeah, I definitely come out of that with some good energy. Now, I'm kind of curious about you. How long have you been going to Magento events?
Yeah, we're kind of a strange bird when it comes to that. You know, we've been in business for 19 years now. We've been doing Magento development as we've been doing Magento as long as Magento has been doing Magento.
Mm-hmm.
We picked it up in a beta in 2007, launched our first site on the first stable release in 2008, and we've been doing Magento development ever since. But you know, we're a small firm. We were an even smaller firm, and it was a lot of heads down, putting in hours for me. And it wasn't till a few years ago that I was actually able to kind of pull back from the day to day, you know, execution and building websites and actually writing code, and to look up and to start actually trying to grow the business. And so when we were able to do that, the first thing we wanted to do is to get out there to, you know, really we were thinking, how do we get more exposure? Not necessarily what do we get from the community, but it's been quite the opposite. You know, it's not so much about exposure as it is about learning from others. And so I want to say it was 2016, had to be 2016, January of 2016. I'm sitting there and I'm like, we're going to go to some conferences and we want to get more involved with Magento. Okay, who are the most well-known commodities in the Magento space? And it was Kalen and Philip and Ben Marks. Because, you know, Kalen and Philip had the Mage Talk going pretty well at that point, and you had Ben Marks. So, you know, small guy, you know, completely outsider in the middle of Alabama. Those are the only Magento folks I know. I don't know anybody else from Magento. So how do we get to know these people? Well, we can go to a Magento conference. We can go to Imagine, and we planned on going to Imagine. But how do we pregame that? You know, when we show up at Imagine, we want to know somebody. And so we saw that Sunshine PHP was happening down in Miami, and that was in January or February of 2016. And we saw that Philip, you know, because he lives down in West Palm, and then Ben Marks was going to be there, and they were going to be speaking. Yep. So my assumption was, and I'm pretty good at finding the cracks in a system, but my assumption was, because it's a PHP event, they wouldn't be as in demand. There wouldn't be as much of a crowd around them as if we were going to a Magento event. And we didn't know what a Magento event looked like. I didn't know if these guys were like rock stars or celebrities, or they were being pulled everywhere, if you'd even be able to talk to them. But I figured I had a better chance at a PHP conference than I did a Magento conference. So we went to Sunshine PHP, and I think I watched Philip Jackson's talk on The Shopping Cart is Dead, which is okay. I still, shopping cart's still here, Philip. It's still here. Yeah, but
it's pretty much still here.
Yes, it's still, it was a good talk. It was an interesting talk. But
not only that, physical shopping carts in stores are still here too.
Yeah, now they got like biometric scanners according to the latest Walmart patents. But you know, him and Ben Marks, Philip and Ben Marks were there, and so we went there and met both of them and hung out with Philip afterwards, and you know, hung out as much as we could with Ben. Ben's in and out. You know, he's there and then he's flying out, kind of thing with most stuff. But you know, from there we've been to every major Magento event in the United States for the last 3 years. We've been to, you know, the Meet Magentos. This will be the third year. We've been to MageTitans now for, this will be the third year. Imagine every year since. We haven't been back to Sunshine PHP, but, you know, go to a lot of the meetups. We participate in the meetups in Atlanta. We've sponsored and organized quite a few meetups. And I'm looking, I think we went to the meetup in Austin, Texas a time or two. So, you know, we've been in it about 3 years now and gotten tremendous value. Travel is expensive. I get it. It is a cash outlay. So you have to have some sort of business justification for it. And it's been well worth the spend for us, based on, you know, just knowing folks. This live stream wouldn't exist if I didn't know enough people to sucker into coming on here and talking about things, right? So if I didn't, you know, if I hadn't met you at those conferences, we wouldn't be here having this conversation. We've gotten a lot of leads and exposure and opportunities, and learned a ton from being at these conferences.
Yeah, I think we met probably a couple of years ago. Meet Magento New York, right? I think that's probably about right. 2016.
That was the one they had at City Winery, right? That was 2016 was City Winery.
That sounds right. That
Yeah.
sounds right.
We definitely, I'm not sure if we met before that at Imagine. I don't know if you were at MageTitans, but I definitely remember
We
you
might have.
from Meet Magento New York.
Yeah, yeah. But we might have met at Imagine before that. But yeah, I definitely remember talking to you I'm drawing a blank now.
Gary
Your
was
guy,
there.
Gary.
Yeah.
Gary,
Yeah.
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 So yeah, chatting quite a bit. That was a good event. So
Well, it's
yeah.
always amazing how open and honest people are. It's stuck on you now. I gotta yell into the microphone to get it to switch back to me. It's always amazing how open and honest people are in those conversations when you get them in person. I mean, they will say things that they just can't say online on the phone. You know, they don't feel comfortable saying. But when you're sitting there after hours and you're, you know, whether you're having a drink or you're getting dinner or you're just sitting around the sofas having a conversation. It's amazing the openness of this community, even from someone that would be your competitor. I've learned a ton from people that traditionally they are competitors, right? I mean, we want jobs that they get, and hopefully they want some of the jobs that we get. So, but it's still one of those things where it's you know, everyone is trying to help each other grow, help the ecosystem grow, continue to push Magento forward, which is, you know, one of the things that's so great and so frustrating about the Magento community is that everyone's so passionate about it. And that's great in that, you know, everyone's passionate about it. They all really care and they want to see it continue to thrive. But then on the flip side, they can be downright pessimistic or negative about it sometimes because they care so much. And you know, so it's anyway. I'm just rambling on about things. That's why we should structure these conversations a little more so we just don't continue to ramble. You mentioned that you're going to be heading over to Austin, Texas, a little early next week. Tell us a little bit about that. What have you got planned?
Yeah, well, Megan and I are going to head over and take a little stop off in Dallas first and see a client we've got there and get a chance to go visit the Creativity team, see Josh and Jenna. So we've been involved in various business things and they've become good friends over the years as well. And then after that, we're going to head down to MageTitans and enjoy Austin for a few days. So it'll be a fun trip. So you're heading over early too?
Yeah, I'm gonna head over Sunday. I'm gonna be over there for a couple of weeks. I'm trying to get meetings scheduled, try to shoot some videos, maybe do an interview or two. I really want to try to. I've got to get back to creating more polished content for this channel. It can't just be the live streams. And we've had a lot of things going on, a lot of things to take up my time over the last 3 or 4 months. And we've gotten away from creating the little short produced videos. And I've got to get back into that. So I have this idea for an interview series. If anybody's watching, you're going to be at MageTitans. I'm going to try to set up an area. I'm bringing 2 cameras. I've got my microphones. I've been cutting foam. I've got all my little microphones in this awesome little case here. It is very, very heavy. And so we're gonna try to shoot some interviews and do some stuff. Meet with a lot of the Magento community that's over there. I still need to hit up a few. Hit up Kalen, see if I can't get in his coffee series he's got going on. Maybe even catch up with Shipper HQ and folks like that. There's a lot of Magento going on in Austin, Texas. So I feel like I'll be able to fill up 2 weeks pretty easy.
Yeah, that sounds like you definitely will be able to. I have also been thinking about that. We got a couple extra days down there, and there's definitely some people in the area I'd like to say hi to if they have time and we can squeeze it in and go grab a coffee, chat, see their office, whatever. So yeah, Shipper HQ is down there. There's a lot of Magento people down there. Got Kalen down there. So hey, we'll see what happens.
I need to find some of those Magento sales folks down there and hit them up, man. We need to be working on some deals together. Come on. Help me out.
Yeah, you got to network. You got to network.
It's
Build
all
those
about
relationships.
It's all about who you know, man. And I'm looking forward to New York. Like Austin, it's finally gotten cool here. Weather-wise, it's finally gotten nice outside. I drove my old Ford pickup truck today, so because it's not 90 degrees outside, and I feel like I'm going to go to Texas and it's just going to be warm. So I'm not sure I'm as excited about Austin weather-wise as I am New York. This is I think both of these are like a month later than they normally are, so I'm expecting New York to be kind of cool.
Yeah, I think New York's probably going to be a little on the chilly side. I've never really spent a lot of time on the East Coast, but every time I go to New York in the fall, I regret only bringing California clothes with me.
You haven't learned that lesson. See, now we've had this conversation. You're thinking about it. You're going to actually take the right stuff. I got my jackets out of storage here.
The challenge is I don't actually own the right clothing.
I got you. Well, you can always just outfit while you're there. Like you can go to New York, you can buy a jacket. You go to Austin, Texas, you can buy cowboy boots. You can get proper attire for whatever geography while you're there, right? You don't need to bring
Maybe this is something these conference organizers should actually have something like, like a rental outfits or something. Like you go to MageTitans Austin, you check in and you can like plop down $10 and just rent some boots for the day, right? And you can pre-reserve them in your own size. I think this is something the Magento crew should really think about for next year.
They're really falling down on the job with that. See, we're bringing fresh ideas here. This is how you jazz it up, get that attendance up.
I want a big hat too. Big hat.
Yeah, big sombrero, like a good authentic sombrero.
I put my hair down, wear the hat. I don't know. I don't know. Might not be the right look for me.
So we wanted to talk a little bit about becoming a speaker, which is, something that's kind of new for me as well. How did you go about, what was your journey to become a speaker on the conference circuit? And maybe, what are some of the benefits that you've gained from it?
Okay. So I'd obviously been attending Magento events and toying with the idea of presenting. Again, people are presenting all these different topics, and there's always times where I say, oh yeah, that was a really good presentation, but what I'd present on is this nuanced aspect of it, or here's the other side of that, or here's a different perspective. And also, I was coming from the merchant background. So a lot of people presenting at events are from agencies or they're from vendors. They've got something to sell. And that, sometimes, if people do that right, that's a great presentation. But if they do it wrong, it's a horrible presentation. You're just getting sold to for half an hour. So there were a lot of things where it's like, oh, I came to this presentation and it could have been a really good presentation on some topic about, email marketing or something. Instead, they were just trying to sell me their particular solution. That sucks. But so, from the merchant perspective, I was always like, I'm in the trenches actually using this stuff. And in some ways, even when there's a lot of developers from agencies in the audience at some of these events, I would think to myself that, well, I'd love to just present to that audience and maybe say, hey, there's a different perspective you could have on some of this, like, how to actually make money as a merchant and what you need to do to support that. So I don't know, I started thinking more and more about presenting, and I sort of talked about it for a couple of years and didn't really do anything. And then it seemed like a really big step, and I'm kind of naturally an introvert, and I don't really enjoy getting on stage and speaking in front of hundreds of people. It's one of those things that I think there are a few crazy people that love it and most people don't. So I just sort of put it off, and I kept on talking about maybe doing it. And then I'd sort of think about some ideas for if I did do it. And then eventually, though, I started actually submitting some proposals to some of the conferences. That's kind of a daunting thing as well. You got to come up with a whole idea and type out an outline, a description, and sort of sell it to the event organizers. But on top of that, they're asking questions on their forums like, hey, what's your previous speaking experience? It's like, well, at conferences, nothing at all. So big fat zero there. So it's sort of one of those things where breaking into doing it is difficult. And it's like a lot of things. You do it and then you have it on your resume. It's easy to do again. But getting into it the very first time is hard. So I actually applied to a lot of Magento events with a lot of different conference ideas, and just sort of had to iterate and refine what I was doing and what I was pitching. And ultimately, what I realized was that a lot of the topics I originally pitched were just too self-centered. They were too much about my own experience and my own business. And what I really needed to do was understand the motivations of the conference organizers, understand what they were looking for, and really try to maybe also network in advance to learn some more about what they're looking for, what they were trying to get on stage last year that didn't quite work out, that sort of stuff, and then pitch topics that other people weren't pitching or that fit into their marketing objectives or whatever. So the first time I finally got accepted to speak at a conference, within several days I got accepted to 2 conferences that were in the same time frame. One was Meet Magento Poland, and the other was Magento Live UK. And that was just about, I was in the right place at the right time, a merchant doing a Magento 2 deployment, talking about how that went, but in a positive light, and going through just some of the issues that came up for us and how we solved them during that deployment. And that got accepted to Magento Live UK because that's what the Magento organization wanted to present to the world at that point. And Meet Magento Poland, I think if I had just done a submission completely out of the blue and they didn't know me at all, then it probably wouldn't have gone anywhere. But I had, I'd met Kuba and Marta at various events. So, we weren't great friends or anything, but we knew each other. We weren't totally strangers. And then talking at Imagine to both of them as they were preparing for Meet Magento Poland later that year and organizing it. I think, just having some personal conversations helped to make that happen.
Yeah, I would agree. I think that's kind of that's how I got started as well. Being on the live stream, having a conversation, but attending a lot of these events and spending time with the people who organize the event. And they know that you're going to take it serious. You're going to, especially if you have zero experience, you can't expect them, they're putting their name and their reputation and their dollars on the line to organize this event. And you can't expect them to take a chance on you unless you can somehow prove yourself a little bit. And by being a known commodity, to where they've had conversations with you and they know who you are and they know what you're about. And, things like being able to watch some of these videos, all of those things help put them at ease that you're actually going to do a good job with that presentation. So it's definitely, I would definitely recommend that you baby step. You go attend some conferences, and then start submitting to those conferences that you have attended once you know the organizers and they know you. So you talk about like one of your first ones being in Poland. Like what's the business case for that? Like what do you get out of speaking in Poland?
Well, at that point, one of the things that was on my mind is I knew that I needed to get on stage. I needed to get accepted. And so I was looking for events where I had some sort of personal connection, where I would stand a chance of the organizers actually taking my application seriously. Again, as a completely unknown commodity, I can't post links to past conference presentation videos. So I tried to focus a little bit more on the places where I would have maybe some sort of a natural strength, some ability to get noticed. So is there a business case for me going and speaking in Poland? Really pragmatically in terms of getting clients, building our business, or when I was working for the e-commerce merchant before, the case for anything there wasn't really a strong business case like that. It was more of a personal development, professional development case for me personally. So I did that presentation while I was still working for a merchant before I'd launched this company. And well, not before I'd launched this company. I was still doing this on the side then, but I still had the day job. And the thing is there was obviously no way to justify that for my employer. And so that was me taking vacation time to fly to Poland to give a presentation and get that experience, get up on stage and just do it. So I think that's one of the interesting challenges for these conversations we've had about how do we get more merchants on stage. A lot of times people at merchants don't have the backing from their employer because their employer gets nothing out. And that's a little bit of a challenge. We think about trying to get more merchants speaking at these conferences, and some of that, if we're really serious about that, might require being a little bit more lenient, a little bit more caring, maybe giving a little bit more to encourage some folks to come and present at these conferences when they don't have support from their employer because it's not part of the core business of their employer. So, yeah.
Yeah, and one of the things I've seen conferences leverage as well to get more merchants on stage is have the agency that the merchant works with, if they do work with an agency, that agency oftentimes will foot the bill or help, get that merchant to the conference and on stage, because
Mhm.
ultimately what's better at selling other merchants in the audience, you standing on stage telling them how awesome you are, or a customer standing on stage telling them how awesome you are. So there's a few ways there, but yeah, definitely there has to be something in it. Like, there's no reason people don't do things if they don't think there's some return, whether it's
Yeah.
educational or entertainment or whatever, business related. There's got to be something in it for you. Or there's 30 different things you could do. There's always a different conference that maybe has more value. So if there's nothing in it for merchants to go speak, then we've got to figure out ways to create that incentive for sure. If you're watching this right now, we are live on Facebook, Twitter, Periscope, Twitch, and mostly YouTube. This is mostly a YouTube live stream. If you head over to youtube.com/ecommerceaholic, post in the chat. We can get your chat. If you tweet it at me, if you hit it, post on the Facebook live stream, we should be able to see it. But most of the conversation in these go on YouTube, although this is not the most active chat we've got going in the world. So if you want to add to this conversation, if there's anything else you want us to talk about instead of this, if we're just boring you to sleep and you want to talk about something more entertaining, then please post it in the chat. Let's have that conversation. This is just a casual conversation. This is nothing too terribly formal. So we're about halfway through the live stream. We've managed to just ramble for a half an hour and kill some time here. But if you want to learn more, if you have questions about how to become a speaker, or you want to know more about these Magento conferences we have coming up, in particular the ones in the US, which is MageTitans in Austin, Texas, and Meet Magento in New York. I know there's multiple events all around the world going on at all times. I don't know a ton about those, but if you have questions, let me know. I will get you an answer. While you're here, don't forget to hit that subscribe button. That helps us out a whole bunch. Share this on social media. Let other people know what we're doing here, and actively participate in the chat. Again, if you're watching, let us know you're there in the chat. Don't remain anonymous. It's all about who you know. And see, if you want favors from me someday, you'll be like, hey, I was in your chat that day. And I'll be like, I remember you, because that was a slow day and you popped up and you helped the conversation, right? I remember this. I remember these things. So today I want to talk about, we've got a segment here sponsored by MageMail we call What You Bitching About on Twitter. And MageMail is the only email automation tool designed from the ground up to help you get more from your Magento store. And I thank MageMail for sponsoring this bit. So much so, I'm going to show the graphic again. So, MageMail, what you bitching about on Twitter? And today, actually, we got a question here. David, I'll get to that in just a second. Let's talk about this, what you bitching about on Twitter, and then I'll come right back to your question. So, Mage Talk, which, by the way, if you found your way here and you're watching this and you don't know what I'm talking about when I say Mage Talk, I have no idea how you got here. Mage Talk is the Magento community podcast. I'm flattered that you made your way here, but you haven't heard of Mage Talk. But you're really missing out. It's a great show, great content. Go subscribe to that podcast. Not right now. You can wait till this live stream's over, but then go subscribe. But they dropped 2 episodes. I haven't listened to both of them yet, but I listened to one. And Philip was having a heated conversation, talking about some things that have transpired over the last couple of weeks, and namely around some in the community. Magento gets a lot of flack. That's, again, like I mentioned earlier, one of the great things about Magento is how much people care about it, and that knife cuts both ways. So they had a heated conversation on Twitter, or actually a heated conversation on Mage Talk, about what had transpired on Twitter, which was a lot of people criticized Magento for kind of, disregarding or sunsetting Magento 1, and not supporting it forever. And no software should live on in perpetuity, but, those same
What about
people
Windows XP?
Okay.
What about Windows XP?
Not much. There's not many things that should live on in perpetuity.
Yeah,
but
it shouldn't.
the Nintendo emulators, the only thing that should live on in perpetuity.
I'm down with that.
Yeah. So, but those people that do that then sometimes have to make those same tough, and when presented with those same business decisions, choose the same decision that Magento has chosen, and that's to discontinue support, or at least they have to agonize over that decision. It's not an easy decision, but go listen to. There's not a ton I can add to that. I just wanted to shed light on that conversation. It kind of goes to to what I've been saying the last few weeks, in that is the feedback mechanism we have with Magento the best way of providing that feedback? Just kind of that open public discourse about every problem. We can have that debate again, but not a ton I can add to that conversation other than, maybe we can touch on the thoughts around the feedback mechanism. We'll touch on that a little bit. And Si, I wanted to kind of get your opinion on, it is obviously everyone has to make business decisions, and sometimes it comes down to cutting something loose or no longer supporting anything. But what do you feel about the way this community provides that feedback to Magento, and sometimes without necessarily thinking through all the consequences or having all the information? Just that openly sometimes negative feedback, even though faced with the same information and the same choices, we would make the exact same decision. So do you maybe have some thoughts around that, or maybe even some recommendations for how we as a community might provide that feedback in a more constructive way? Because I believe in the feedback. I'm just trying to figure out, is the way we handle it the most constructive way of doing it?
Oh boy. The most constructive way? Probably not. I think forums like Twitter do lend themselves towards short emotional outbursts when something irritates us. And perhaps that's useful feedback, actually, because companies are getting they're actually getting that in the moment feedback. They're seeing the emotional response that their choices and their decisions elicit among their customers and other people who are stakeholders. So I don't necessarily discount that as being bad, but maybe we have to keep it all in perspective. The reality here is that the people who are the most invested in these sorts of decisions, and maybe the most irritated when something happens that they didn't want to have happen, they're actually the people that are the most invested. They're the people that have been part of this community for a very long time frequently, and they maybe have an idea of how things should go. But it's a complex economy, and there's all sorts of businesses in this ecosystem. There's a lot of money flowing around. Magento has to make the right decisions for their organization, and individual merchants have to make the right decisions for their organization. And sometimes that might be to go to a different platform, right? So that's actually the control mechanism. I'm not as concerned about what people say in the short term. I guess I'm more interested in the sort of economics of how all these individual decisions play out against each other, and how the ecosystem shifts and changes and morphs over time. And all of that is in the context of all these other competitors that are making their decisions as well. I mean, Magento is not going to be what I want it to be. It's going to be an amalgam of all sorts of other choices that everybody in this ecosystem makes. And we're all just a part of that. And what comes out the other end is sort of an amazing, fascinating creation. It's amazing and wonderful that this platform, with all these relationships and agencies and tech providers and other people providing services and all these different merchants contributing and participating in their own ways, this is all coming together and creating something that didn't exist not so long ago, right? So we talk about back in 2007, 2008, when things were just getting off the ground and being around back then. I mean, back then, if you were looking for a good e-commerce platform that was open source that you could install, man, your options were limited. So look at how far we've come. maybe have some appreciation for all the amazingness that we've built, all of us together participating in this community. And I don't know, just keep it in perspective. And man, holding on to the past, Magento 1, it's built on a lot of really old tech. I understand why it's a challenge for some individual merchants to make that transition, especially if they've done an awful lot of customization. That's one of those strengths and weaknesses of Magento, right? You can customize anything, but the more customizations you put in there, the harder it's going to be to upgrade. So that's the price you pay. But a lot of the people who are complaining about being forced off Magento 1 at some point in the future, you know, they're the ones who have benefited from all the ability to customize the platform. So that's why it's hard for them to transition. And that's actually why a few years ago I was making the argument that it makes more sense financially to transition sooner, so you get more of a useful lifespan out of the Magento 2 platform with all the customizations you're going to do there. I don't know. Keep it in perspective, people.
So what you're saying is jump now before Magento 3 comes out. Is that what you're saying?
Pretty much. Yeah. I mean, it's I don't know. I've seen a lot of businesses that are doing millions and millions, and tens, hundreds, thousands of millions of dollars a year in sales. It's crazy. And there's a lot of money flowing through this Magento platform. And then, you know, they're going to complain that they need to do an upgrade that's going to cost them a little bit of money. I mean, just, yeah, it's tough. All the integration issues with big, complicated organizations are really tough. But man, moving to Magento 2 is just such a better platform in so many ways. I know there's some warts and there's strengths and weaknesses and there's trade-offs involved in any system. But I don't know. I wouldn't hold on to the past.
Yeah,
That's the choice I've made.
I haven't seen too many merchants that are doing tens of millions of dollars complaining about having to upgrade or migrate to Magento 2. As with any smart merchant, they're weighing their options and they're seeing what's best for them. But you know, most of the complaining I've seen personally comes from the smaller merchants. You know, those guys doing sub $1 million or around $1 million or maybe even a couple of $1 million, but their margins are not incredibly high. So, you know, it's people who didn't really want to invest in their website anyway, people that maybe haven't invested in their website's a little out of date, or you know, they haven't added any new functionality, their design's been the same. A lot of the people that you run into that ultimately long-term shouldn't be on the Magento platform. If you want to build a website and put it out there and leave it alone and never spend another dime on it, then this is this is not the platform for you. So, you know, you probably need to move to another platform. And so just the fact that they have to now invest more money when, you know, they just spent all of this money to build this website 4 years ago, and now they've got to invest more money to upgrade. It's a sign of you know, probably not the right attitude toward their business. They're definitely not looking at it as an opportunity to improve and to, you know, go after more market share. But those are typically the merchants I talk to that are the most agitated about it, is folks that just don't want to spend money on their website because they either don't see the value in it or they're not making a ton of sales right now anyway.
I think that's actually part of the whole issue, though, as well, because ultimately Magento needs to make money too. They're a business. So if you know, there's a vocal group of merchants out there who aren't spending any money at all, Magento's making no revenue at all from them, and you know, they want to complain that Magento's making decisions about moving, you know, not supporting an older platform that's generating no revenue for them. It just seems like a pretty silly conversation to be having. You know, if you want to support, you know, if you want to be heard, buy a license. You know, engage, go to events, take the training, actually be a customer of Magento. There are a lot of businesses that aren't that have never paid a dime to Magento for anything, and yet they've benefited from using the platform for the last 10 years. There's a lot of them out there. Again, it's like you can't complain about something you got for free and got to use for free for 10 years that built your business. I mean, I guess you can complain about it, but I'm not going to take you seriously if you do.
All right, I think we'll end that. Let's get back to the positive. Let's try to, you know, it's a beautiful Friday afternoon here in Opelika, Alabama. I have a fantastic single barrel right here, you know, Four Roses. There's no sense in like there's nothing good coming out of going down that negative rabbit hole. So I want to kind of get back to
Let's do it.
speaking and these events, and we've got a couple of questions here in the chat. And David Young asked, David, thanks for watching. I appreciate you being here, and I appreciate your question. And David's question is, how do you decide what's worthwhile to present, even at smaller meetups? What's your process for determining what's worth actually creating a presentation around?
So I don't know. I guess it's evolved over time because part of, again, remember I was talking about part of it is trying to understand what the conference organizers want. It's sort of like, making a Venn diagram of what's the point of this conference? What are they trying to achieve? What are their objectives? What's the audience like at this particular event? And then sort of mapping that to what could I present? So it's kind of like trying to find the intersection of those things and come up with 2 or 3 ideas. And usually I'll submit 2 or 3 ideas to any particular conference that I'm pitching to. The actual topics that I'm interested in are, I don't know, again, we were having the conversation about we all have to get something out of this. It's not just the conference organizers. It's not just the audience. It's me as well. What am I getting out of this? So maybe the first time I was breaking in, it was just I wanted to be on stage presenting about anything that I could be competent about. But now I'm maybe a little bit more choosy. What is going to benefit me as well? Conference, audience, me, all of us need to get something out of this. And so it's a little bit more complicated. But I would say that a lot of these conferences post a lot of videos. They'll show you everything that was presented last year. And if you really pick a couple conferences and you look at, the nature of what people are presenting there, and then you just sort of consider your own personal experience and what could you present that wasn't presented that's still aligned with what this conference is choosing. That can be a good path forward. There's been something that's really on my mind is at a lot of these conferences, it almost seems like the people presenting and being chosen to present are oftentimes presenting on these really interesting, heady, thought leadership sorts of topics. And it's important to think about the fact that there's a big spectrum in the audience at all these conferences. There are people that just started working with Magento 2 weeks ago, and their business sent them to this event so they could start to learn more about the platform. And you don't have to present some big, complicated, heady topic that's going in some theoretical direction about what e-commerce is going to be like in 10 years. You could be giving a presentation on something that's useful to that group of people. So don't get caught up in thinking it needs to be complicated at all. It could be, we need presentations on the basics at these conferences. How do typical companies deal with Magento product management issues? Or what is a PIM system and why would you want to consider it? Or I don't know, it could be anything. But look at what the conference has a lot of and maybe steer away from that because there's probably a lot of people presenting on those topics. Find some of those other areas that would be useful to people in the audience and aligned with the conference and go that route, aligned with your experience.
Yeah, I find that. I think that was, something I struggled with as well. Is it doesn't have to be. It's a lot like these videos I put out on this channel. It doesn't have to be this earth-shattering, profound statement that just sets you apart as some sort of intellectual genius, right? There's people who don't understand the content as well as you do, or even people who understand it as well as you do. You can do the research and understand it more. So it gives you an opportunity to actually go deeper into something. Just try to, to reiterate, try to figure out what the organizers want, what the audience wants at that particular conference, what the audience looks like, and find something that you can provide some value on. What could you, if you were talking to a junior developer or someone, even if it's not development, someone that just started, what value would you provide to them? And those things, there are topics for talks in your everyday life, and you're not thinking in those terms. It's not like, oh my God, this would be a good talk, or this would be a good blog post, or this would be a good video. So just start looking for those opportunities and then go deep into that is my advice. Kelly Madsen here says, all this talk is getting me excited for my first Meet Magento New York, just a couple of more weeks. Kelly, thanks for watching. Thanks for being a part of this conversation and your comment. I look forward to seeing you at Meet Magento New York. If this is your first one, you're in for a treat. Really, last year's with Mage Mojo putting it on, it was now I've only been to a couple, but and some MageTitans, but I thought they did an excellent job. There were a lot of fantastic talks. The venue was incredible. It's hard to beat New York in the fall anyway, but it was a real good time, a real good event. Come see my talk. Tell me how good or how bad it was. We're gonna talk about the things that merchants are doing or not doing on their website that's costing them money. And so it's going to be really more a talk about maximizing the value of your customers so that you can afford to go out and spend more to acquire them. It's going to be fun. It's just one of those talks. And how did I get to that topic? To go back to David's question, how did I get that topic? Here's how I got that topic. I wanted to go speak at Meet Magento UK, which was being put on by JH. And I was talking to Jamie at Imagine, and I said, Jamie, I would like to come speak. I'm already going to be over there in the Netherlands. I could stay another couple weeks. I could talk at Meet Magento UK. What do you want me to talk about? And he said, well, if you did a talk kind of like this, that would be kind of cool. And so I took exactly the topic he told me, and I did a rough outline, and I submitted it, and they rejected it. But I submitted it to Meet Magento New York, and they took me up on it. So I'm gonna give that presentation anyway. But as you win some, you lose some. It's okay. They had a lot of great submissions from people maybe a little more well known or a little more officially tied to Magento than me. So wasn't a big deal. It actually worked out for all of us. I needed to get home anyway. So let's see. We've got in the chat here another Deppner. How should I put it? I'm trying to figure out a nice way to put it. As far as I'm
watching this. I want to see what you come up with right now.
Yeah. Maybe I've drank too much already. I don't have a good word, but she kind of skews reality a little bit there. So she tells me that y'all got engaged at basically a tech conference, and no, it was in Spain somewhere. So I don't know. I don't know how much to trust her questions at this point, but she's got a good one here. So as long as she's staying in reality here, her question is, it seems like in order to get a speaking slot at Imagine, you have to be a sponsor. What are your thoughts?
What are my thoughts? Well, I've applied to speak at Imagine quite a few times. So actually, some of the last year, one of the talks that I submitted to Imagine, I also submitted to Magento Live Australia, and they accepted it for Magento Live Australia, but not Imagine. And so that was my first opportunity to go to the other side of the planet and see what Australia is like. And that was pretty fun. But yeah, I don't know. I think this is a perspective that some people definitely have, and it's it's part of the reality that conference organizers have to get money to put this thing on, and most of the money to put a lot of these conferences on actually comes from the sponsors, not always from the audience. Now, obviously, Imagine charges quite a bit, so they're bringing in money from multiple sources to put on a show as big as they do. But I think there's always some pragmatic reality that conference organizers have to deal with. Sponsors do speak at events; that's part of it. Also, at a Magento event, prominent partners also probably get a little bit of priority in terms of whether they speak at events. It was something that I always wanted to speak at Imagine or other Magento events while I was really actively working on the merchant side, I thought sometimes merchants are really underrepresented at these events. And it would just, I don't know, as somebody working on the merchant side, I got so much value from the hallway track talking to other merchants. And I wished that the people I was talking to in the hallway were actually on stage talking. So those were the kinds of talks I submitted. And yeah, they don't get selected. So I don't know. That's something. That's there's some truth there, but I know it's not only that.
Yeah, you know, there's probably some truth in it. You know, I tend to try to look at things optimistically. I submitted to speak at Imagine this year, and it was rejected, probably because the topic I submitted was garbage. But it wasn't good enough. Yeah, it was okay in my head, and I come up with it last minute, and I submitted it, and it's like, you know, that didn't stand much of a chance of getting accepted. So it's okay. It's still kind of, you know, it's still depressing a little bit when you hear back that it wasn't accepted, but it wasn't good enough. So I'm not upset about mine not getting accepted, but yeah, it's true that there are, you know, a lot of the same partners giving presentations oftentimes. You know, we've got, you know, sponsors giving presentations. I'm trying to tiptoe around it as best I can, but I guess it's best not to. You know, yeah, okay, you've got to pay for a conference to be put on, but on the flip side of that are the people who are spending the most money, namely the big partners, the big, you know, whether it's technology partner, whether it's PayPal, whether it's Amazon, you know, whether it's one of these larger SIs. Are those also just the higher profile folks that might draw in a bigger crowd? Are those also the people that have the strongest relationships with the folks that are actually pulling the trigger and deciding who gets to give these presentations? So those are the people who are spending money going to all these conferences and sponsoring them and putting people on stage at all these micro conferences. So they're known commodities versus, you know, someone like me. You know, the people who are organizing Imagine, they probably don't know who I am. So, you know, there's a little bit of both. There's some safety in putting someone from PayPal on versus someone from Jamerson on, right? So, I'm not upset about it. I've just got to figure out. How much money they want. That's all, right? I can play that game too, as long as we know what the rules are. I can play that game too. So it's not, you know, I mean, as long as it's not too much money, I can't play that game. But I don't think it's necessarily that way. But I think the optics can play that way in that it is a relationship game. Oftentimes, it is a risk situation, and so a known commodity, whether it's a large partner or a large sponsor that's been around a while, is just a safer bet. So
one of my takes on that is that, again, yeah, I don't want to be bitter that I've been rejected, you know, for 10 different things I pitched. I want to say, all right, like you said, what I pitched wasn't good enough, or it didn't fit the theme that they were going for this year, or some broader marketing objectives, or whatever, or I'm not known well enough, or I'm not good enough at presenting yet. So, you know, those, you know, I'd rather own it. Like, that's on me. So it's on me to come up with a better idea that more closely aligns with the objectives of the organizers. It's on me to become a better presenter, to build up a library of videos of past performances I've done that are good. So I've got evidence. And it's on me to also say, all right, you know, I didn't get accepted for Imagine, but I got accepted for Magento Live Australia. And I'm really grateful for that, right? That was a good event. And I got up on stage and I tried to do a good job and give a good presentation. And again, provide a little bit of evidence and get a little bit more experience that, you know, I can do this at a bigger conference as well. And so I hope that if I put the work in and take ownership of that and keep getting better, that more opportunities will arise in the future. And that's how it works. That's real life.
Absolutely. Megan mentions here about Meet Magento New York to don't miss the rooftop party. And the rooftop, all of these conferences have really good after hours events. And I know because one of the things that I try to do is it's all about networking for me. And the best networking happens early and late. So get to
Yep.
these things early and stay late. I try to always be one of the last people to leave a room. So the after parties are fantastic. You stay there. You're going to be exhausted the next day, but that's just part of the price to pay because all the great conversations seem to happen early or late, over coffee or over drinks after hours. Always the best information and the strongest relationships. So absolutely do not miss the rooftop party. Kelly Madsen here again in the chat. Thanks, Kelly. You catch the talk. Maybe it'll be pretty good. I think I'm excited about it. You tell me whether or not it was any good. It's one of those. Here's one of the things these are the things I guess I'm worried about or you have anxiety about as a presenter. And it's like, I don't want to go into some deep technical monologue that loses the audience. And so you don't want to go into depth, and you want the talk to be entertaining, a couple of funny moments. You want to be able to provide some actual value, but then you worry about the level of the audience. And do I provide this talk to an audience that's just going to sit there and say, well, this was very basic. Like who doesn't know this crap, right? So those are the things you worry about. But catch the talk. Let me know what you think about it, and I'll definitely see you there and at the rooftop party. But Si, do you have those same concerns? Like, how do you kind of get over those fears when you've got a topic and you're writing this thing out? How do you get over that? They're just going to think this is a stupid topic or way too basic.
Well, I don't know. I guess part of it is I know the things that have mattered to me over the years, and I just make an assumption that if it's mattered to me and it's been a challenge I've had and then I've got some experience with from fighting through something and trying to solve it, that's probably going to give value to other people as well, especially if other people aren't talking about it at conferences. But I don't know, when you think about the audience is going to be people from all across the spectrum. There's going to be people that have been using Magento for 10 years, and again, people that just got hired into a new job 2 weeks ago. And I don't know that there's any way you can truly satisfy everybody and make a talk perfect at every level. I think that it's important to keep it in perspective and realize that your talk is just part of that person's experience of the conference. You're a piece of the conference, and they're going to get those other pieces from other presenters. So, I mean, we want them to have a good experience coming to a conference and to have some good takeaways. And if your talk's a little bit more complicated, maybe they'll remember that it was good, though, and they'll come back and they'll look at the video again a few months later when they know a few more things and it's relevant to them at that point. I mean, I've done that lots of times, going back and looking at talks that didn't matter at the time, but they mattered later. I don't know. I just keep in perspective. Like a conference is a lot of talks, and you're just one little piece of that. Just do your piece well, and it'll resonate with somebody.
So as far as slides go, let's talk about slides. This is something, and we're going to go for another 10 minutes or so here, but slides is something that's top of my mind because Meet Magento New York put a deadline of me having them my slides 2 weeks ago this upcoming Monday, and so I started on the slides yesterday. And so I'm 2 weeks behind on getting them the slides, but should the slides stand alone? Like if you just pushed your slides out to somebody, how much of the story should they be able to follow from the slides? Because what I do is my slides are just really photos. It's got a little bit of text on it, but I don't put a big list or charts or graphs or maybe a quote here and there. So you can kind of tell what I'm talking about, but you're not going to get the gist. You're not going to get all the value from it by just looking at my series of photographs that illustrate my points. So how do you go about slides, and what are your thoughts around what they should be?
Well, I think when I first started giving presentations, I was more prone to putting all the bullet points of the things I was going to talk about on the slides. And I definitely have moved further away from that. I want the slide to be a prop that I'm talking about rather than actually saying what I'm talking about. But the thing is that's not the right answer either necessarily, and especially because the Magento community is so international. There are a lot of people for whom English is not their first language. And if you actually say in words on the slide what you're saying in your presentation, it helps people. And maybe that's not as much of a factor in North American presentations, but that was something I sort of grappled with when I was presenting in Poland. I mean, obviously, a lot of Europeans speak English very well, but when you're presenting in Poland, it's still a second language. And the people in the audience are at all different levels. Even, presenting in the UK, there were a lot of people from all over Europe in that audience. And I think that even though I want to say, oh, I want to be this great presenter and have the slides with the perfect picture, and I'm just giving this great speech to go along with it, and it's not bullet points, then I feel like that's actually doing a little bit of a disservice to the people who might really get more out of it if they can sort of read along as well. So I actually think I'm leaning more towards a little bit more one style in the US and a little bit more another style if I'm in another country now. But it's something I'm still just trying to work out. I don't know.
Context matters, I guess, when it comes down to it, right? All right, so we've been going for about an hour now. I appreciate everyone tuning in and watching. Next week, I'm not sure if I'm doing a live stream next week or not. I'm going to be traveling. I'm going to be in Austin. I'm going to take my live stream setup. That's why I've been cutting foam and sticking microphones into cases, and I'm trying to get my live stream set up down to one bag, one large backpack. I've still got to buy a computer that'll do it. For now, I'm going to carry this big monstrosity here. So, I don't know if I'll stream next week because I don't know if I'll be somewhere that'll have an internet connection. But the 2 weeks after that, we're going to stream live. I'm not sure exactly what time, but I'm going to be filming interviews, and then we're going to try to do an hour, hour and a half, maybe a 2-hour live stream at MageTitans, and then meet Magento New York. We may be streaming off and on all day. Not really sure there. So hit the subscribe button. At least then you'll be notified when we go live. Follow me on Twitter. You can find me on Twitter. Find me on Twitter there at eCommerceaholic. And again, thanks for watching. Cy, any parting shots there? Anything else you wanted to let the audience know before we sign off?
No, just if you're coming to either of these events, I'd love to say hi. It's always good to meet new people and network some more and see what comes out of it. I'm looking forward to seeing you there, TJ, and it's going to be a good next few weeks. I'm looking forward to it.
Definitely. I need these conferences. I need the energy, so I'm looking forward to it. If you're going to be at either one, again, just walk up, introduce yourself. I'd love to meet you, love to see you there, and I look forward to seeing you either there or in the next live stream.